Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our Race Today podcast, where today we will be having a conversation about budgeting and financial wellness. I am Dr. Alicia Williams, and I'm one of the co-producers of our Race Today podcast. And today we will be engaging with Letitia, Lisa, and Makita, and we will also be having an opportunity to hear from CR Gibbs, who is our moderator. I'll hand it over to Sherelle to give her brief introduction as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Sherelle Zicki, and I'm one of the co-producers here at Race Today. Looking forward to have this great conversation about financial wellness, as we all need this.
Thank you. And again, Race Today is a 1-hour talk show about racism in the United States, as well as an activist platform to eradicate racism across the United States. With that, I will begin with our brief introductions. First, we have Letitia.
Hi, my name is Letitia Stallworth. I have been a financial planner for 23 years. I know I look young, but I'm not. And so I enjoy educating people about economic empowerment and racial equity and finding other ways to advocate for social justice. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Letitia. Next up is Lisa.
Hello, my name is Lisa McBride. Currently, I'm an acquisition specialist, and I found myself in the finance realm from life experiences. So 2018, I decided to pay off debt, and within a few years, I paid off $120,000. So I feel the passion that I have now to just share what I did and how I did it, because a lot of times I think we were told that, student debt is going to be with us, student loans going to be with us forever. And I'm living proof that it's not. So I want to share today. And thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Lisa. Nice to have you. Last but not least, we have Makita.
Hi, my name is Makita Gebra. I actually switched careers in the height of the pandemic to work in finances, given that there was a lot of issues that came to light when it came to money. So I am a licensed financial professional and have been serving my community for the last 2 years.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. And with that, I'll hand it over to CR to kick off today's conversation. CR.
Good afternoon, everyone, and let's begin. I'm addressing these to all of you. You're not required to answer if you don't want to. Even though we will certainly be diminished by a lack of response, but we want you to be comfortable. So answer the ones you'd like to, and don't worry about the ones you don't. We begin with what are some of the common problems that you find people have with money? Now, we're going to get to the without money later, but with money, what are some of the common problems you find people have with money?
I'll start since I'm the first one that I can see on the screen. One of the common issues I see people have with money is they underestimate how much they make, and then they overestimate how much they spend. And so when I say they underestimate how much they make, they see that this is what my gross salary is. And so they assume I'm getting all of this money, and you're not. The IRS is coming for their money, FICA, Social Security, all of these things are coming out of your paycheck. And so a lot of times you'll meet with a person and you'll say, hey, how much money do you make? And they'll give you the gross amount. And you're like, that's not what you actually make. So can I see a pay stub? Because they're building their financial future on a gross amount, but you actually live and need to live within the net amount. So I'll leave it there.
All right. Anyone else?
I would definitely have to agree with that. It is the clear understanding of what your money is, what is yours, what is not yours, and what you're doing with it. And oftentimes that means reflecting in the previous month to say, ooh, what did I buy? Or, whatever it may be, but really understanding your money and how much you're making.
Thanks a lot. What types of solutions do you offer people to manage their day-to-day finances?
Well, it's astounding to me how many people don't actually have a budget. But I think first and foremost, you need to have a budget. And when I say a budget, I mean a budget that is realistic for what you actually make, what you take home. And so sometimes people, I had a client earlier this year, and he was unemployed for 6 months, and then he got a job making $200,000+, and he wanted to start planning. And we did a budget, and his budget had him in the hole. And I didn't understand how he could be in the hole when he was just making $0 and now he's making 200,000. But he built this whole budget around, I'm gonna make this 250,000. And as we already said, you're not making 250,000. You're making more like 180. But he planned this whole budget around he's bringing home 250,000. And so the budget is key, but the budget needs to be realistic for what you bring home and what you actually spend.
Yes, I totally agree with Letitia on the budget. That's one of the things I try to stress to my friends and family, the importance of a budget, telling your money exactly where to go, because if not, your money is just going to leave and be gone from you. But if you have it assigned, in a spreadsheet or however you want to do it. I know a lot of people like, oh, I have the budget, it's in my head. Well, the Bible tells us about, write the vision down, make it plain. So having that budget in front of you, being able to say, this is where this is going, and seeing it and seeing, what you'll learn is that you have really more money than you thought you did. But now, because you're allocating it and telling it where to go, now you're freeing up and seeing, oh, I have, a little more money than I thought I did. So I think is very key to, having that budget and managing that budget. See, looking at it with my budget, I probably look at it, every day, probably, to just make sure, I'm, everything is everything, I'm reconciling and things like that. So I'm with Letitia that budget is essential.
I think
Wonderful.
also, oh,
Mhm.
sorry, to add on to that is also having a clear definition of your goals. And a realistic expectation of that, right? Wanting to become a homeowner or traveling the world, whatever it may be, we can budget for that as long as you know what you want. And I think one of the biggest downfalls is that we're just told we get to retire at 65, right? But no one's talking about what to do and how to get there. So not only the things that we want now, but how do we plan for, the future?
Yeah. And I will
Excellent.
add on that with that, you need to differentiate between what is an essential expense and what is a lifestyle expense. A lot of times people will say, oh, well, I need to eat. Well, you don't need to eat at Ruth's Chris every day. So you need food, but what kind of food and how much are you paying for food? So differentiate between a lifestyle expense and essential expenses.
Okay. There is a difference, I would imagine. I have friends that would love to eat at Ruth Chris every day, but their budget is Ruth Crispy. And there is a big difference between the two. Is there an easy way to break? Because all you ladies seem to be people who have no reservations about giving bad news to folk when it comes under the rubric of helping yourselves. But how do you talk to people who really, in a way, don't want to hear the bad news that they are about? They know you're going to give them bad news sooner or later, whether it's in your first conversation or your sixth conversation. Have you developed ways to break the news? Is the word gently? Is the word matter-of-factly? Is the word firmly? How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you tell people you really must do better than you've ever done before in terms of managing your finances?
Well, I have a reputation for being real talk, no chaser. There are some other names that some people call me, but I'll just leave it at that. So I'm a pretty straight shooter. Most of my clients know that. I prepare them for that up front in our first meeting before they even become a client. But I am also a fiduciary. So my job is to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. You pay me to give you wise counsel, and that's what I do. And sometimes people get upset, and sometimes they get really upset and they leave you. I had one client who, when I told her that she couldn't afford the house she was buying, she told me I was being negative. I said, I'm not being negative, it's math. You can't afford a mortgage that's 5 times your salary. Math is not positive or negative, it's neutral. So you just have to be able to tell people the truth. And if you can't tell them the truth, you're in the wrong business.
Amen to that. Anyone else? I know you've all been in that situation of givers of bad news or bringers of reality. So can you share with us some other experiences that you've had?
Yeah, I think it really depends on, the person and their situation and how to break the news for them. If you've got someone who's in, their 20s, they're making okay money, because not many 20-year-olds are making fantastic money, but you can show them the stretch of $100 and how easy it is now before, you have the mortgage payments and the car payment, everything's piled on. Whereas, yes, as we progress, get older and get closer to, the goals that we thought we were going to have by now, it does have to become that tough conversation of, well, would you rather retire or do you want that new Audi?
Mhm.
And, I don't know anyone who just wants to work forever. And especially, there's so many laboring jobs out there that many people are depending on. So it's checks and balances, where do we expect our life to be?
You mentioned young people, and so that brings us to credit card debt and student loans. And I know you must have, Ms. Makida, some wisdom, some stories. How can you help people take care of those two nettlesome situations, credit card debt and student loans?
Yeah, I think, we're in such an interesting point right now, especially with, the Biden Harris debt relief programs, and that, most student loans are in deferments, right? So it is an opportunity that if you have multitude of debts, whether it's credit cards or a combination with student loans, you have the opportunity to focus in on those credit card debts, right? And also focus in on paying those down, so that now the focus will be the student loans once that's opened up and whatever direction that goes in, right? So we're in a really great opportunity to re-strategize where we're putting our money and how to free up cash flow, essentially. With that being said, there's just clearly not enough education when it comes to properly using a credit card, right? We tend to have this lavish lifestyle, living paycheck to paycheck, so glorious, right? And then we find ourselves maybe needing to replace tires on our cars or whatever it may be. And then now the only source of money is that card. So it's this perpetual cycle. So it is, I think, a great opportunity to clean it all up and let's start anew.
Miss Letitia and Miss Lisa, what do you got? What can you tell a student who he feels the world, but unfortunately he has only a limited budget? What can you tell them?
I am very active with my alma mater, so I literally talk to students almost every day. And one of the things that I tell students who are a lot of times working and doing work study is, if you can, start paying back your student loans while you're still in school. There's no rule that says you can't do that. And a lot of those times they're in subsidized loans. So the interest rate is deferred until they graduate. But if you start paying it while you're in school and making a little bit of money, then the loans won't be as big as when you graduate. And the other thing is, if you're working, even if you're working 10, 20 hours a week, you should be getting in the habit of saving at least 20%. Just a habit. And so that way, when you get out of school, you're not in the habit of always going to a credit card to pay for whatever, because you have savings.
Miss Lisa, you expressed your ability to defy the laws of financial gravity and by paying off your student loan. I know you have a special perspective. What are the most valuable things that you can tell particularly a young person or an older person, with respect to paying off their student debt?
First, I would say don't believe the lies. And what I mean by don't believe the lies we're told in school is the student loan debt is going to be with you forever. You're going to take that student loan to the grave. And I believe that lie too. And so that debt was with me from, I graduated from 1995, and that debt left me, this year totally, $75,000 worth of debt. I had believed that, it's going to be with me to the grave. But what I did was I began to learn different tools like the Snowball Method. You probably heard Dave Ramsey talks about that, Anthony O'Neal and other people talk about that. And so I was like, let me try this, because I found myself at a place where I was scared if I was going to lose my job, because, I had have a high level security clearance. So I'm like, okay, my credit card is up, $39,000, $40,000. I have student loan debt of $75,000. I'm over $120,000 of debt. What am I going to do? And so I began to work that plan of that snowball method of every time I would take my bills put them all in a spreadsheet from the smallest to the largest. And I began to work that thing where I would pay off, what I could, take the next amount of money and add that to it. That's what it's called, a snowball. So if you're paying $100 on one, once you pay that off, then you'll take that $100 and pay what you were going to pay, and then, double, pay that on that. So I continued to work that plan. And within 2 years, I had paid off only thing I had left was $28,000 of student loan debt. And then this year, and it was deferred because of the, what's going on with COVID and everything. And then I was able to just continue to save money.
Mm-hmm.
So this year, instead of having that debt continue to hang out for 2 years, I had the money. I said, I'm going to go ahead and take this $28,000 and pay that off. And I became consumer debt free. So I'm here as a living testimony, and I've never been, in finances or anything like that. I just had the passion because I had a why. My why was, I hope, I want to be, financial free and be able to sleep at night and just, not have that debt, overshadowing things. So I believe you can still use credit cards responsibly. You just gotta, be responsible. And, if you can't be responsible, do not use credit cards. If you're going to if you don't have the money, don't use the credit cards. That's what I tell people. So that's some of the things I say.
No, thank you. I mean, we all appreciate that. That's very common sense, but hard as heck to do in real life. Thanks a lot. A financially healthy retirement. How would the snowball option work in terms of a financial retirement? We'll start with you, Lisa, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry, you said financial retirement?
Yes. The issue I'm asking about now is a financially healthy retirement. And I'm asking, is that something that the snowball option would be appropriate for, or something, or we need something else?
Well, for me, I think I did the snowball method more for paying off debt. However, I think for retirement, there's other options that you can do. I know some of the things I do right now, even with helping pay off debt, or things that I want to do that I may not have the funds to do it. Just say you guys were talking earlier about the Ruth Chris budget or whatever, Christmas. So I started in the beginning of the year and say, okay, I want to go to Hawaii. I want to do Ruth Chris every day, every month or whatever. And I do what I call a sinking fund. So I have a fund allocated for stuff that, hey, I want to do Ruth Chris. I want to do Christmas. I take that amount of money that I say I'm going to budget. I'm going to spend $800 for Christmas. And then I take that times 12, and then I have that allocated, and that fund is just sitting there sinking, just going, staying in my account each month. So, and for my retirement, I have Fidelity. Each month I do about 5%. My goal is, to continue to just, where I can do more than 5, do 10, 15, 20, percent into my 401k.
Okay.
I think if
Ms. I'm sorry, go ahead.
If I can add to that, because, I think with the question and the snowball method, I think what it does is it adds clarity to someone's debt picture. As opposed to, if you have, let's say, 5 cards that you're paying down, it's often sporadic. Yeah. And the reason why is I think debt feels like an overwhelming kind of like dark, gloomy cloud. And given, social media and things like that, you're now watching people live their best life when it's not real. The cloud isn't just over on you. Everyone has some form of debt, or the majority, I shouldn't say everyone, the majority of people do. With that being said, I think snowball method, what it does is it gives you a clear, organized path to not only pay down that debt, but also reserve and clear up some cash flow to be able to invest into your short-term and long-term retirement portfolios. So it's a great method if there's anybody out there who feels that stress and that burden of, their debt and focusing almost too much entirely onto it. It gives you clarity.
Well, Miss Letitia, I'm coming to you now. What do you got for us?
Well, I do comprehensive financial planning. So everything from budgeting to retirement to saving for a house, a car, children's education. So we're doing it all at the same time. And a lot of times I'll get someone who's just out of school and they're like, why am I saving for retirement? I'm 22 years old. But the issue is you never know what's going to happen. There's this thing called life, and there's all these unexpected events that happen. And so if you're solely saving for retirement, you're missing a lot of opportunities of having access to funds that are not, tax sheltered, which there's a penalty if you try to access them. So even with the snowball effect, what I try and teach my clients, especially when I get them early, is you need to have a credit card. Why? Because you need to, at some point, get a loan for a mortgage or a car, and you need to have a credit history in order to do that. And so your best bet is to figure out your budget, and then where you can pay everything on the credit card and then pay the credit card off each month. And so this way it allows you to build up your credit, to have the credit utilization that also affects your credit score. And if you're paying it off every month, then you're being a good steward, and you'll have a high credit score that will give you favorable loan terms for a student loan or a car or a mortgage. But it's not either or, it's everything all at once.
Okay.
And I just want to add a little something
Sure.
about the credit card thing. And when I first started, like I said, I was listening to some people, they were on the tip of, no credit cards at all, cut them up, all of that. And I was trying to do that. And I canceled a few credit cards, and then, of course, my credit score dropped. And I know a lot of people push that because they're like, hey, you don't need credit in this world, you can, in which there are people that do that. They don't, they can, there are mortgage companies that lend to you that if you have a zero credit score and all of that. I understand that. However, I just feel as Black Americans, we need a little more. So I realized that I need my credit cards. I need credit because I'm not going to get the same opportunity that the next person might get that might be pushing that to say you don't need a credit score and you don't need a credit card, because of course, they can get things that we can't. So, and like I said, I'm not trying to say, that there's no Black people that probably don't have that, but I'm just saying the majority of us, realistically, we do need, we need credit, and just manage those credit cards the best that you can, and do what you have to do to, if you don't have the money, don't spend it. And I know, it sounds cliche, but, these are simple things that like I said, I'm not a financial expert. I just did this out of, I needed to get out of debt, and I did. So I'm just sharing, this information. So I just wanted to chime in and say that about the credit cards and and that stuff when it comes to us.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to get to generational wealth in just a moment. I did want to ask if any of you had any comments. I just saw the commercial where all I need to do is call. That I don't need to do anything else, and I can get $500 or $1,000. I don't know if you guys have, Huh? Yeah,
Payday
well,
loan?
yeah, I mean, but I guess there's some version of it, but it just doesn't sound pay loanish, I mean, when you got it, all you have to do is call. And
Yeah,
I
it's
just
called
want,
marketing.
yeah, yeah.
Payday loan.
Yeah, but what it is you're saying is that that's just nothing more than a payday loan. I mean, and you don't have to, they say you don't have to give any extended information about yourself. I mean, it sure seems a fast way to lose your money. But let's get into it now. Generational wealth. Uh, what is it? Is it possible for people of color to create wealth 6 or 7 generations down the pike?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is that's a loaded question. Because when you say 6 or 7 generations down, that assumes people are creating children.
Okay.
And not everybody does that. So,
Mhm.
you know, I am number 4 of 5 children, and only 2 of my siblings had children. But those 2 siblings had 8 children between them. So, you know, I guess we'll get to 5, 6, 7 generations down the pike. But not everybody's going to have children. And so when you say you're going to create generational wealth for that many generations down, you need to be sure there's going to be that many generations that exist, because otherwise that money is going to be defined as lost money. And you know what happens to lost money. And so there are family trusts. There are real estate trusts that you can have with your family, and you guys all go in. There's all sorts of options in order to be able to create generational wealth. One thing that is very troubling is, you know, after slavery, there were a lot of Black people who got land. And then nobody knew how much land, where the land is. Somebody in the family would die and nobody would keep track of the documents. And so then all of these people are coming up and getting this land for pennies on the dollar, because we didn't keep proper documents and nobody talked about money or land at the table. And so if we're having a family that we want to be able to create that generational wealth for, we actually need to be having these conversations around the dinner table and saying, this is where this is. This is who you go to if something happens to me, because that's how the generational wealth gets lost.
Wow.
I'd have to agree with that. That's the biggest thing, is not only focusing on building your wealth so that there is something to be left behind, but absolutely putting in those proper documents in place. And it's so often that I hear someone say, well, I don't have anything, so I don't need a will. Well, yes, you do. We all do. Look what they did to Aretha Franklin, Chadwick Boseman, very successful Black people in our community that's, even with the wealth, didn't have those documents in place. And I believe Aretha Franklin is still in probate court, her estate, and she passed 5 years ago. So it's important.
Well, let me ask you about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add, I know Letitia said a good point, that a lot of, not everyone is going to have children to leave that generational wealth with. But also, I just want to remind people that let's not leave that generational burden on others, with life insurance, because a lot of times, what happens in our community, people don't have life insurance, and we have to do a GoFundMe or talk to, it falls on that family member that actually has been saving their money and trying to do what's right. And every time you look around, and you got to be that person to come out of your pocket with $5,000 for uncle, whoever. So I, just want to piggyback on what Letitia said. So yeah, let's not leave a generational burden on the rest of us that's behind.
What kind of mindset you have? I have friends and some extended family members, and nobody seems to, and this is about land primarily, who takes on the burden of doing the saving, doing the investing, doing the paperwork, and how does that work successfully? Just in something like land, what are the do's and don'ts?
So I will say, I have always been the point person for whatever can go wrong. somehow it lands in my lap to correct it in my family. And as I said, I am not the oldest. But we all have those people in the family who, whenever something goes wrong, we call them. So I'm the one who gets the call. If something happens to me, there's nobody for me to call. I just need to figure it out. And often I do, thank God. So with the issue of the land and who handles that, literally, it's usually a huge debacle because somebody dies and then somebody says, and this literally happened to one of my clients a couple weeks ago, her father passed, and she's like, well, I don't even know what he has. And he's in his 80s, and so somebody should have known what he has. But now you have to spend all this time going through documents and, rummaging the house, trying to find where's your stuff. And so what I tell my clients particularly is, at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, when you're with your parents, you need to have the I love you conversation. And the I love you conversation is hard, but you need to have it. And here's how you start it. Mom, Dad, I love you. And God forbid anything should happen to you, but you are of a certain age. And if something happens to you, I'm going to be grieving, and I'm not going to have the wherewithal to be searching for X, Y, Z. Where are your papers? Who do you bank with? Do you have life insurance? Common sense questions that you'll need to answer when the worst happens. And, when you're grieving, some of us, we don't get to grieve in the same amount of time when everybody else is grieving because we have to handle all the paperwork. But if they've supplied you with that information, then it makes it easier. It's still going to be hard, but it makes it easier.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's almost like I don't know, it's almost like it's taboo in our community to talk about finances and talk about life insurance and burial and what we're going to do about things, because like Tisha said earlier, I'm that one too. I'm like, now I'm like, do I need to just start setting aside $5,000 in my budget? Because every time I look around, here's this $5,000 I'm having to pay out for for a funeral. So, I think we do need to talk more about it, have that conversation with our family members to say, hey, in the event, what are your wishes? What do you have? So I'll know. I recently had a cousin that passed away, and we still to this day don't know nothing, don't know where his stuff is, so, but, he had a safe at my mom's house. We have no idea what the combination is, cars and trucks. We have no idea where any of the paperwork is. So, yeah.
It is amazing. Ms. Makeda, is there anyone in your family or in the business world that you emulate in your financial affairs?
Definitely. I like to take time to, study the wealthy in part, some of the successes and not such success stories, just to see what was done and what happens. But, when it comes to specifics and especially the closest relationships, I would say my parents and also my in-laws. My parents were immigrants, they migrated here in the late 70s from Ethiopia, and, all they had were their kids, and they spoke a little bit of English. They figured it out, and they focused a lot of their finances on real estate and doing, flips and not in the traditional way of buying and refabbing a house and then selling it, almost immediately, but more so like the homes that we lived in, and then upgrading every so many years and taking some of that profit and building that towards their investment future. And then on the other side is my in-laws, whom my mother-in-law retired out of finance and during COVID. So she had worked for 40 years in the financial services industry. And it's always been just kind of interesting to compare the two. There's so many opinions out there of what to do with your money. There's so many, I would like to think mostly real estate agents that are like, oh, put your money in real estate, put your money in real estate. And then also us on the finance side say, well, let's look at some other options, and you can have, traditional portfolios along with the real estate. So I almost feel like that is me, as I'm taking a combination of the two households and putting it together where, it's influenced a lot of my decision makings, and because I saw both sides be very profitable in that.
And How about the rest of you? Any people that you emulate in your family or in the business world?
I am first generation. Second one in my family to graduate high school, first one to go to college. So there was no example per se for me. It was just, you're going to be the first, you need to figure it out. And so now that I've been in the business for 20 something years, I look to other people, and unfortunately, a lot of them are not Black because there's not a whole bunch of those examples that I have easy access to. But when I find them, I'm like, how did you do that? I need to learn how to do that. And so we figure out a way for them to teach me and then me to give them something. So it's a reciprocal relationship. But for the most part, I've just had to figure it out because I was the first.
Yeah, with me as well, I didn't, as far as family, no. I think with me, the interest first started in church, doing like Crown financial classes and financial peace courses, learning to be a good steward over God's money. That kind of, where it's kind of, started. But like I said, just a few years ago is when the passion heightened, with me trying to, get out of a student loan and consumer credit card debt. So I looked at a lot of different people, and I kind of just, I think, we can look at, a lot of different people that you can follow. But, I try to tweak things and make it my own, kind of think outside the box, be creative with things. I know even like with, as I was paying off my debt and things, I some people have just a straight, way of this is how you do it. But I think, if you leave yourself open for creativity, like some of the things I did was, I would take, as I paid off different student loans, I would then transfer some of those, not student loans, credit cards, I would transfer some of those to like a zero interest credit card. One of my credit cards would offer like, zero interest. So I would transfer one of those to zero interest. So that way I continue to do the snowball method and continue to pay it off, but now there's no interest. So, always trying to think outside the box and be creative and not just stick to one thing or one advice of what one person is telling you. Like I mentioned earlier about do away with credit cards. There's, someone that actually says, you should never do credit cards. You should never have credit cards. But like I said, for us, we need our credit cards. We need our credit. If you want to buy a house, you want to have those things in place. So, take that advice, but tweak it and be creative and think outside the box is what I encourage.
All right. Well, let's get to that other reality. We've touched on it a few times. When your clients just don't want to take your advice, when they're really resistant to changing their financial habits, have you figured out everything from quick and dirty to slow and painful ways to get them? They understand at some level that you're working for their benefit, but they just can't bring themselves to do what you really want them to do. What have each of you worked out in terms of further communicating to your clients how important it is that they change their financial habits?
Well, I lay out my expectations up front, and most of my clients have come to me through referral. I had one client who was the parent of another client, and I told the son, your dad didn't want to give me XYZ, so I don't think this is going to work out. But the son had been with me for like 10 years. So I said, and he said, no, I'm going to make him do it. And so I was like, okay, but now he's on my watch list. And so as he's on the watch list, every time we have a conversation, we're doing comprehensive planning, and he always wants to do something that someone else is doing. And it's great that you want to live like this, but you also need to have that income level, that asset level, and if you don't, then what you want is not realistic. And as I said, I'm a fiduciary. My job is to tell you the truth. And so I typically give people 2 years because my clients, they pay me an annual fee for advice. And so I give them advice. If we go 2 whole years and you haven't taken my advice at all, then we're gonna part ways. I'm gonna say, I think you should work with somebody else, because maybe you'll be more inviting, or maybe you'll be more susceptible to their suggestions and their advice. But I don't like wasting my time. So 2 years is the limit of my patience with that.
How about the rest of you? Are you as hardcore? Do you have brass knuckles, or do you try to do it another way?
You don't got to make it sound so bad, CR.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if I'm as hardcore, but I think laying down the expectations absolutely is the first and foremost, most important thing. Like, hey, I'm going to give you the tools, and the roadmap, and you've got to go to work, and I'll be right beside you. But I feel like it's a two-way road. It's mutual respect. And I've told clients, like, listen, my door is always open for you. Only you can close that. And that's just the case, and it may be just a little bit of a difference for me, because we're a little bit different. My firm, in which we don't charge for our services. So if I'm literally giving you my time, then we have to respect it. And
Sure.
Again, I'll give you the tools, the roadmap, and you can choose to use it or not.
I don't have any clients in the quote unquote client per se, but I did start managing my mom's finances in 2020 when I moved back this way. And that has really been a challenge. However, it's been 2 years now. And with her being on a fixed income, I had to show her the importance of, having a budget. And I think, it took a while. She's still, now she's finally on board totally. She, asked like, hey, is this in the budget before I spend it, and things like that. So it just helped, and also helped me and helped her to see that even on a fixed income, she's on a, little set small income, that you still can budget and you still can, save your money. She had never had a savings account. She now has a savings account. She actually had gotten up to, having like $2,000 in that savings account, which that was huge. She had never had, like I said, never had a savings account in her life. She's 7 years old. And seeing that, and then it came, it came in handy. She just had an electrical problem, and she was able to, use that emergency fund to help pay for that that issue. So, like I said, I don't have a client, but with her, it's really been a challenge. But she's, it took a lot of patience. But she's, come around and now understand and see the importance of having a budget and finances and things like that. So.
Thanks a lot. Panelists, I want to have you switch directions for just a second. And I guess I'll explain where I'm going this way. I was asked to do a history presentation at a suburban junior high school. And I noticed that right before I was getting ready to go on, they announced an investment class. And I think this was in Loudoun County. Generational wealth is fine, but we must, it seems to me, teach the folk behind us about some of the responsibilities and processes that we discussed thus far. If their school is not doing it, what is the role of the family in making sure that the generation behind us, and perhaps even the generation behind them, understand at the earliest possible age about budgeting and finance?
Yeah, I truly believe that we, as we know, we live, work, and operate in a system of design, hence why we're not being taught in school. I mean, we should be learning about money as soon as we can read anything, and just even at the basics, and the schools that are teaching financial literacy, only half of high schools in the US are actually required to teach one course. I mean, they're scratching the surface. I think they're actually still teaching how to balance a checkbook. How irrelevant is that? I mean, it's useful, sure, but we need to learn proper credit utilization, all these things that we've discussed. so that we can buy the home, we can retire. And so, yes, it is everyone's responsibility. It's the generation behind us, behind them. It is us, it is our children to keep elevating, teaching, doing the due diligence, working with licensed professionals to get the in-depth view, as well as our own due diligence. So we have to come together on that, because if we don't, we're just going to keep repeating the same cycle and live in the society that has been created for us to fail in.
Indeed.
I
Thank
hope
you.
we can, I hope we can start, really promoting it in our sororities and fraternities. Because to be honest, I just don't see the government, the city, the schools doing it, because the goal is they want us to stay broke. They want us to stay in debt. They want us to stay that way because it's big business. The more money we spend, the more, for them, for big business, for bankers, for everyone to be able to monopolize off of it. So I don't think, to be honest, in my heart, I just don't feel that they're going to put it a priority. So I hope that we, in these Greek little organizations and other organizations to, begin to try to, start that, take that mantle on to train up our children the way that they should go. So.
Well, I went to a business school, and even that business school, which costs $78,000 a year, didn't teach personal finance. And so because I am in the industry, I actually started teaching financial literacy to the Black Student Union at my alma mater. And so we have seminars on earning, saving, and spending, all about budgeting and creating a plan and saving your money. And then I'm doing another seminar with them that's all about debit, credit cards, and FICO scores in January. So that if the school isn't going to do it, then we know they need it. We're professionals. We can go and find people who need this education and organizations who want their members to have this education and say, hey, I can provide this seminar, this material for you for free. Are you open to having your students learn this material? And if they are, you go where the need is. And so it's just about creating awareness of this is available to you. So find out who wants it, and then we go and deliver it. And the Black Student Union has been very helpful in doing all the marketing for it. And I just show up, teach the material, and then even some students are interested in becoming financial planners like me. So the more Black people you can get into the industry, the more of us there are to be disciples and go and teach more Black people.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think even in a little more simplistic way as well is even sharing our testimonies. Like even that's what I've been doing, even on my job. I've been sharing, with, whoever I kind of come in contact and feel led to, I share my testimony. Even at my job, I've, shared my spreadsheets and things of, that Snowball and how I, all different things with all different people. So I think we can even start with just, who we come in contact with, letting those people know. I have a young lady now, she'll come back to me like, hey, this is where I am, I'm paying off my debt. So even if it's just, it felt good, even that one person that I was able to reach, on the job. Like I said, in my day-to-day life, my friends, I'm always sharing. Not everybody want to hear it, not everyone is ready to, to go there, but there might be someone like that young lady at the job. There might be one. So yeah, like I said, we can start even in our immediate circles and on our jobs, just sharing, our testimonies of how we, overcome things or, paid off debt, credit card debt and things like that. And someone might want to hear more about it. So.
Lack of knowledge can obviously lead to misconceptions about investing. And what I'd like to do is to ask about the most outrageous misconceptions that you may have encountered or people brought to you in terms of investing in the stock market, mutual funds, bonds, even real estate. What are some of the war stories that you've personally gone through?
Well, the best misconception, which I think is laughable, is people think the stock market only goes up. And I'm like, how could that be possible? Regular people would never have the chance to get in if it only went up. But I remember being in the industry and being in my office September 11th, 2001. And we know what happened that day, and the market was shut down for days. And one of my clients called me because they thought their money was physical money inside the World Trade Center. And I was like, really? You're not, your money is binary code. It's zeros and ones. It's not physically in a building. But I thought that was interesting. They thought it was physical money inside the World Trade Center.
Wow. Wow. Any of the rest of you?
Yeah, I think on the other side of the misconception of the stock market only going up is that it only goes down, right? That fear of losing. And, you know, when it comes to financial literacy and really understanding how money works, you're already losing if you're just saving your money, right? We know this purchasing power when it comes to inflation. So, you know, if you don't have some part of your money growing, right now, currently, you're losing 8.5% of it. And guess who's profiting? And guess who's already an investor? Actually, you are, but you're not reaping the benefits of it. The banks are taking your money and they're selling it off to mortgages. They're making 6-7%. And now you're losing 8%. You know, so you're already an investor, but you're not making money from it. So might as well get out there and work with the professionals. So
Right on. Absolutely. What is the advice that you would give in terms of being a smarter investor and making sure that we build a platform by which our kids and grandkids can not worry so much about college? I mean, we can't wait on President Biden to do his thing. So is there something that we have yet to do, something we should do immediately to build that platform, which will help us invest in a way to make sure that our kids can go to college and grandkids as well?
So I will say this because I have been a recipient of divine intervention. You can use other people's money for college. And so we have this thing that we need to save for college, and I see a lot of people put their own retirement at risk so that they can send their kids to college. Your kids can get a loan for college. Nobody's giving you a loan so you can retire. And so when you start talking to these children about money, which as far as I'm concerned, as soon as they start asking for stuff, mommy, I want a lollipop. That's when you need to start this conversation about money and what things cost.
Okay.
But it's one of those things that everybody else seems to have this hyperactive awareness to scholarships and grants and all this free other people's money that we're missing out of simply because we don't know, we don't ask, and more often than not, we don't look. Google is a thing that you can search anything. And so while there are, you know, college savings plans and strategies, there is also let me find all the free money possible for my child who is interested in this and has these grades, and free money is great, I think. So.
All right. Anyone else?
I just want to agree with that. Yeah, I mean, period, point blank, you can't bankrupt your retirements to fund a college, and that you're just going to repeat the cycle, because now if you have no money to retire, long-term care, all these things, now your children are having to pay for you. That's going to affect their children, and that's how we affect generational wealth, right?
Thanks a lot. Well, I couldn't end our conversation without touching on cryptocurrency. And whether it's Bitcoin or your former best friend was the guy that ran Alameda, and it may not be a great sign if the guy that you're looking for to your crypto advice seems to have hid out in another country. That's probably not the best thing to indicate any kind of stability. But what advice do you offer clients that are interested in investing? And yes, in light of everything that's going on now with crypto, how do you feel about it?
Well, I would say to anybody regarding any investment, if you don't understand it, you shouldn't be in it, period. If you don't understand it, you shouldn't be in it. Secondly, if you're not willing to lose it, you shouldn't be investing it, because there is always the potential of loss with any investment, And so cryptocurrency came and it's sexy and everybody's like, it's so great, but it's not backed by any full faith and credit of anything. And then you look and you're like, well, when the stock market started going down, you didn't hear anybody still wanting to invest in cryptocurrency. But I had clients who in the beginning, they would say, oh, well, my son or my son-in-law and that person told me about cryptocurrency. Well, you're retired. You probably shouldn't, because your risk tolerance is definitely different than this person who is still working. And so you have to look at suitability, you have to look at risk tolerance, and at the base level, do you even understand what the investment is? I can explain it to you, but if you still don't understand it, it's probably not for you.
Okay. Miss Lisa? Comments?
No comments on crypto. I don't know much about it, so I don't really dabble in, I agree with Letitia wholeheartedly. I don't really dabble in stuff I don't know. I have a little investment in it, but maybe something that I don't mind losing, but I don't know much about it to be like, oh, invest in it. So no.
All right, Miss Makeda?
Letitia said it. Yeah, she said it. So
Yeah.
Don't mess with stuff you don't know about, which is good advice. Miss Letitia, I do have to ask you, what, if you don't mind sharing it with us, what is your alma mater?
Babson College.
Okay, and that is?
In Wellesley, Massachusetts.
All right.
It has been #1 in entrepreneurship for like 26 years. And I have 2 degrees from there.
Congratulations.
Only twice.
Congratulations. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for your participation again, and for your sharing your expertise so generously. I am going to turn it over to Dr. Williams and ask her to, she and Sherelle, to bow us out of this.
Thank you, CR, and thank you, Letitia, thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Makeda. This has been a great conversation, wonderful nuggets. I love the opportunity to really focus on what we as a Black community need to do for each other, for ourselves, and for the larger community. So thank you for sharing all your expertise, and I'll hand it over to Sherelle to close us out.
Thank you, Alicia. I actually wanted to start off with just the simple saying, it takes a village. For me personally, I think personal finances has always been a struggle. And sometimes it's great to just ask for help when you need it. Sometimes what you don't know will continue to be something that you do not know. So if you can ask the people for it, it's very easy for us to do the whole rob Peter to pay Paul, or have a champagne dream with a beer budget, but to actually reach out to professionals that actually know what to do as far as how to budget and do things the correct way, and not say that you can't live your life within reasonable factors, because we have Lisa who paid off her debt, and that is something that's over a lot of people's head right now. So these conversations is what's needed, and thank you guys for doing the groundwork and even being a reciprocate of doing the hard work of paying off your debt. So I want to thank you ladies for joining us for this conversation here today at RaceToday. We will be posting this episode on our YouTube and on our Facebook page, and look forward to having more conversations in the future. So thank you ladies for this great conversation. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.